This is dedicated to all my beautiful queens, all my beautiful ladies out there. She's a queen. Go queen. You got it, girl. She's a queen. You better represent. Go queen. Go queen. Go. She's a queen about her business. Queen. Working hard on a mission. Yeah. Head high, purpose driven. Purpose driven. Crown will never tilted. Queen. Go queen. Go queen. Go queen. Go. Represent. You're a queen. You're a queen. Oh.
Hi, this is Gary with the 10. I'm going to give a shout out to the Skill Set Podcast. Go, girl! You got it going on, baby.
So thank you guys for joining another episode of the Q-Chat podcast. Today, my guest is a father, mentor, public speaker, author, and podcast host by the name of Pie McElveen. We're going to talk about his new book entitled The Transition, and it's about the male perspective following divorce. And we're going to talk about that and also my favorite topic, self-love. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well yourself. How's everything going with you?
Doing good. Thank you so much for joining the platform. So I know, like I said, you have a long list of things that you do, but I definitely wanted to start off first with your book. So how about you go ahead and just introduce the book and just tell us all what it's about first.
The book is entitled The Transition, My Journey. It was inspired by my life after divorce. So oftentimes we hear about the woman's perspective after divorce, the dark times and their whole transitional period of, what they go through to try to get back on their feet after, that particular situation happens to them. So I just wanted to share with everyone to let everybody know, listen, man, us men, we go through those emotional down times as well, right? And there are some situations we have as we're trying to get back to our feet. So I just wanted people to understand that it goes both ways, and not all the time the woman is the victim, in terms of at the end of a divorce. Sometimes, it's not a man's choice, but, his wife may be doing some infidelity things and she might. So everybody, man, it goes both ways. And I just wanted to share.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it, because you're right. It all goes both ways. And I think a lot of things that people don't understand about divorce or the demise of any relationship, you do go through a mourning period. No one, I would think, goes into marriage saying, hey, one day we're going to end up divorced.
Nah.
Should death do us part? Like, people have good expectations when they walk into a marriage. So what are some of the things you feel that as a man that you went through emotionally with your divorce that may not get talked about as much, like if you want to get into specifics?
Well, for me, a lot of it really, it was painful, no doubt. Like, I'll never downplay that. But a lot of it wasn't even about me. It was more about my kids, right? Because when you have children and you're getting divorced, and they're the product of that, a lot of times kids tend to blame the breakup on themselves. Like, what did I do? Or, maybe because I misbehaved that day, or, so a lot of times they like to put this blame on themselves and not understanding they're forced. You know what I mean? This decision is forced upon them. It was made by two adults who just couldn't handle being together anymore as partners emotionally, right? So that, so my biggest challenge was just making sure that regardless of what pain I was going through, that I stayed connected to my kids. So that was my biggest, that was my biggest concern. And that's where I put most of my efforts into as I was going through my transition, thus putting my feelings and my emotions on the back burner to make sure the babies were good.
Mm-hmm. How long were you married before you got divorced, if you don't mind me asking?
We were married almost 10 years, but we were together for almost 20.
Wow.
Yeah,
How many children do you have?
3.
Did you go through therapy after your divorce? Like, what was your process for the healing? You know, like, did you seek professional help? Like, you know, what was your step process, you know, to get over the wound?
Honestly, I didn't. Again, a lot of my healing came from just being there with my kids, and understanding that they knew daddy was here. So what I did was, after the divorce, I intentionally, moved probably a block away from where they lived. So although emotionally I'm still going through this, I still wanted to make sure that my kids had that option of after school seeing daddy, before school seeing daddy at practices, seeing daddy at games. The one pact that I made with them was that our relationship wouldn't minimize to holidays, weekends, or summer breaks, right? Because that's not what they were used to growing up. So I didn't want them to have to deal with that. I didn't want to minimize our relationships. Oh, you can only see me here, or you can. So I wanted them to still have some sense of normalcy to say, hey, that guy is still here. He's not going to leave me. So I'm good. You know what I mean? I feel good knowing that I can leave school and still see daddy, or I can wake up with daddy and go to school. Although it was still a tough transition because mommy and daddy wasn't in the same house. However, at least we were close enough where, they could still experience being with both parents, daily, or, a few times out of the week.
I commend you as a Black man that you focus on your children, and making sure you salvage that relationship, because I think that's one of the main pitfalls. I think when a family demises, one parent gets the short end of the stick, the children suffer. I think that's one of the things that we don't talk about enough when it comes to divorce. Because a lot of times I think people just think of it's just the two adults splitting up. But when there's children involved, it's not just the two adults that have walked away from a marriage.
We don't even matter, right? And that takes a lot of maturity, like, to understand that thing. Like, at this point, I didn't even matter. As hurt as I was, right? I didn't even matter, because I knew how, as an adult, I knew how to kind of deal with my feelings and my emotions. Not all the time does kids know how to. I had 2 boys out of this marriage and a girl. So the boys aren't mature enough mentally to handle the situation, right? My son told me, he was like, he was angry because he felt like, I was being replaced. So, when moms is dating someone else, he was like, no, I'm not doing that, because you're not replacing my dad. So I just had to help him understand that it's not that I'll never be replaced, because I'm divorcing your mother. I'm not divorcing you guys. And I think that's what a lot of men need to understand, right? That you're divorcing your partner. You're not divorcing your kids. So all that craziness about, well, they're dating this, let this guy. No, that's your child, right? So why would you leave your responsibilities to another man instead of just saying, hey, they're mine, right? And they depend on me, and I just had to do whatever I could to make sure they were good. So that was a lot of my therapeutic process through this whole divorce thing. Just making sure, long as I saw that my kids were good, then I was good. And then everything else with me, I could kind of figure out and get through. So that was my my journey. And that was actually, man, that was my strength through the entire process, along with family support and, and friend support, different things of that nature. But the most important component for me was just knowing that my kids they could still smile because daddy still had football games. Daddy still had back to school nights. Daddy still, so that right there for me, that just meant the world to me.
So do you think not minimizing what you went through, but do you think because you salvaged having a healthy relationship with your children that it made the divorce or maybe the pain of it somewhat easier to deal with? Like, I hate to use the term easier, but was it better to manage, I guess?
It was more manageable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was more manageable. It was because, again, think about anything you go through, right? When you have some type of distraction, that main thing isn't that main thing anymore because you have something to, kind of like take your mind off of that. So yeah, or I don't know if it made it tougher because I was still around, a lot more than I wanted to be, and the presence of, the ex. So yeah, and we all know, man, in the beginning, things get extremely, extremely ugly, right? Yeah. So it's tough, man. But somebody had to be the adult, like, and that was just my approach. And by nature, I'm the type of person that I don't like.
Hey, yo, peace, world. It's the Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon, and this is the Q Chat. Keep it locked right here.
My approach. And by nature, I'm the type of person that I don't like conflict or confrontation anyway. So right. I'll do whatever I can to take myself out of that equation when it comes down to conflict and confrontation. And I never, ever, my kids never saw me angry, ever. Like, so they never saw me get into any type of anything, confrontation with their mother. So, and as they gotten older, they're young adults now, they come to me and they appreciate me for that. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure they were good so that I could manage me, and as long as they were good, it was easier to manage despite what was going on. So even those moments where you show me that you really don't care, then that's when I go into another mode and I shut down because now it's about self-care at that point. So I love me enough not to allow you to abuse me mentally and emotionally because you're upset about a decision that was mutually made by the both of us.
Yeah, you hit a lot of points. And like I said, once again, I definitely commend you as a man that you forged that healthy relationship with your children because it's also, I think the scary part, and I'm speaking from a person that's divorced and my divorce was terrible. It was a very ugly situation and it lingered for years. But I think one of the plus sides of like what you just mentioned, because as a Black man, especially, you forced this positive relationship with your children. As you also mentioned, you did not allow them to see, be negative towards their mother or anything like that. Another thing that you're doing is also setting a foundation for your children to show them still what healthy relationships mean, because I think that's one of the things, when our Black family fails, and I come from parents that have been married over 50 years. So when I got divorced, it was like, well, damn, you don't want to have your children think, okay, relationships are just destined to fail. You also don't want them to think that there's something wrong with them so that they can't have a successful relationship in the future. So I think it's just priceless that you showed your children a positive relationship regardless. You brought some positivity out of something that, didn't work. So I think that's a plus because that's going to benefit them in the long run. Because, obviously we want our children to repeat success, not things that we've failed at,
Exactly. Yes.
So that is a definite plus. So let's talk about the book. Now, obviously you've been transparent right now about what you went through. What made you decide, hey, I'm going to put this in a book. I'm going to help some others that have been through this. I'm also going to tell the side from the male perspective. Because you're right. I think when we talk about divorce a lot, I think it's natural that people always talk about, the female side of it. So it's always a plus to hear the male perspective on any subject. So what made you decide to put this on paper?
I think I was indirectly forced, like in a way where I just felt like it became a responsibility because myself and a lot of my guys, we were kind of going through the same situation at the same time and just sitting in a room full of men, emotional men, right? And just picking out the different emotions from angry to hurt to mad to like done, like, you know what I mean? To the point where they're like, people are just, because you have those questions. Was it worth it? Did I waste my time? Is it something I could have done differently? So, there's always a bunch of questions. And for about a week or two, I was going to bed, and I just kept like coming up with this transition thing just kept hitting me. And I'm like, well, I didn't know what to do with it. I honestly didn't know what to do with it. And so I told my lady at the time, I was like, listen, I keep getting hit with this transition. I don't know what it's about, but it's whatever. And she always tell me, like, you're a creative mind, so you always have something going on. You'll figure it out. And we were talking, me and some of the guys were talking, and it was like, man, your perspectives on this thing, man, is amazing. You should like write them down and just share them with us. And let's have a men's, conference, and let's just talk about this thing. And I was like, wow, okay. So I was going to write a little memoir, right? And then it just turned into, nah, I'll be cheating myself if I do that. So I wanted to share more points about relationships, whether it's the divorce, the gather, your own personal relationship as you're going through to get yourself healthy again, the relationship between you and your kids. And then I wanted to kind of round it off with, what can we do to, kind of avoid that particular situation in general? How could we look or keep ourselves responsible for some of the agreements that we made at the beginning of a relationship, right? And hold one another accountable so that we don't even have to deal with this ugly, disease. And it is a disease because it happens far too often. And especially in our communities. And I see it as an educator where I'm dealing with young boys who doesn't have that dynamic in the home anymore. And like, just for them to get a hug from a man means the world to them. So, so I felt like I was kind of charged to write this book. Like, I just felt a moral responsibility to put it out there.
Wow, that's really deep. So as far as the book, when did you write it?
I wrote this book probably 3 years ago.
Okay. How long
did it take? I wrote it well after well after the divorce.
Okay.
So yeah.
How long did it take you to write the book?
About a year and a half.
Okay, that's a good amount of time. So when you wrote it, like, how's the response been? Have you done any? I know COVID has done some things for authors, but have you been able to really reach out and
No,
do
I haven't. Well, prior to COVID, when I released it, I was doing festivals where they allow vendors to come in and sell. So I did pretty well when we were allowed to be out as vendors and set up the tables. And then people just understanding, what the book was about and knowing that it was written from a man's perspective. I definitely got a lot of feedback, and I was invited to a lot of places to speak about the book. But then once COVID happened, that kind of, shut it down, and everything turned into Zoom. But I just feel like the connection isn't where it needs to be when you're really having these type of conferences and you have a bunch of people on a Zoom call, and, because everybody's doing their own thing. And so Katrina, kick up your heels, man. She's phenomenal. So she's like, listen, I don't know what you're doing, but we're not going to let this die. So you might as well get your mind right. We're going to get some more interviews going because people need to hear about this book. So I thank her for really believing in this project, and everybody around me, man, for believing in this project, even when I felt like, okay, I wrote it, I did my part, I'm done. So I thank everybody for the push. So yeah, it's and it's picking back up. And I was told the other day, it was like, when you least expect it, it's going to really move for you. So just being patient.
I think in general, just hearing things from the Black male perspective is needed. No matter what you guys are talking about, I feel like we need to have platforms from the Black male perspective. It just enlightens people on different levels. It also gives empowerment to Black men as well, because it's saying, hey, like, we are listening to what you guys say too. I just think it's much needed. So some other things I noticed when I was looking through your site, there was something on there about invisible wounds, which really struck me. So I definitely want you to explain that and to touch on that topic.
Invisible wounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's such a impactful statement, because for me, a lot of people don't understand it, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people go through a lot of things from childhood to, young adulthood, and they struggle and deal with a lot of traumas, man, whether it's emotional abuse, whatever it is. And we hold on to those things internally, right? And we go through different situations in life that kind of that are triggers to some of those traumas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So although you can't physically see these scars on people, like, people are scarred internally, and we don't know enough not to say certain things or treat people a certain way or respect people in certain manners, so that we don't trigger these things in manners so that we don't trigger these things, these traumas that was once a big deal in their life. Because from parenting, parents could have done something to scar them emotionally, and they've never gotten over it. Because let's face it, in our communities growing up, right, therapy was a no-no. Like, Black people don't do therapy. You're not doing that. It was a taboo.
Second. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, wait, 1 second. I couldn't hear you for 1 second. I'm sorry.
So yeah, with invisible wounds, right? So it's the trauma, it's the internal traumas that we suffer from childhood to young adulthood, even now, right? People will abuse you mentally, right, emotionally, right? And a lot of times you can't see these scars because they're not physical scars, and people hold on to these things, and we become triggers by not understanding that everybody is dealing with something at some level. And we feel like we can say what we want to people, do what we want to people, treat people however we want to, and it's okay. And a lot of people, man, they deal in different ways. So a lot of people, they'll just break down and give up. Some people will snap, right? So yeah, that invisible wound thing is real. It's real. And I want people to understand that is real. And we definitely have to start taking care of one another, man. Like, we as humans were put on this earth to love, right? And that's probably the one area we struggle with the most.
Right. Wow.
So, yeah.
That is a very powerful statement. And you did mention something else important. Like, we definitely our generation did not grow up, oh, go to therapy. Like, what is that? Like, that's
suck it up. Of. Yeah, suck it up. Get up. Yeah, be a man. Like,
pray. Yeah. I just go pray about it, which, like I said, I'm always careful when I say that, because I'm not trying to minimize the power of prayer.
But hear this, right? Everybody always yell, go pray about it, right? So, and like yourself, I get kickback from that as well. I grew up in church. I'm a strong believer in the power of prayer, God, and I believe that, he takes care of us, to the point that I believe that he put people in place, right, so that we can take care of us as well. So if we believe in him that much, that we should believe in his, creation of people, therapists, family, right? So regardless of how much you pray, at some point you need a human touch. That's why he put other humans here, because we can't always touch him, right? So although we can reach him through prayer, not always will he physically talk back to us. Sometimes you just need that human touch. So it's not downplaying the power of prayer. It's just understanding that he's here for us in more ways than just prayer.
Yes, yes, yes. I love it. And another thing that I saw of your site, a quote that I really like, is that when you've reached the point in life when you look at everything and everyone through a negative lens, that's when you've reached an unacceptable level of unhappiness. Like that really struck me too, and I've said this in the past. Unhappiness really at the end of the day is a choice. Life is not perfect. I do talk about manifestation, self-love, a positive mindset. But I also have my disclaimer. Hey, I don't fart glitter all day. Like I have some terrible days. I have days when I'm upset, but I still have the power to take control of that. You know what I'm saying? We all do. It doesn't mean life's going to be perfect. No, indeed, life is not going to be perfect. We're going to have some days that really can get the best of us, but we do have the power, like I said, on how we control that. So with that statement, and I know you touched on it a bit earlier about self-love, but I definitely want to hear your perspective on self-love as a male, because I think for women, sometimes I've asked that question, people correlate it to physical self-care, but for me, self-love is internal. So I would like to get your perspective of self-love internally as a man, especially a Black man. How do you define it?
Self-love for me is just being truthful. Like, everybody, the young kids keeping it real, right? So I got to keep it real with me, right? I got to understand what makes me go and what doesn't motivate me to go, right? So once you understand who you are as an individual, then you can do whatever you want at this point. But when you don't want to take time to yourself, for yourself, to learn yourself, you're stuck and you'll never grow. So I don't care how much success you think you see in physically, like how many millionaires do we know that have committed suicide, right? Because we're thinking they got money, they're good. No, because they haven't taken out time to themselves, for themselves, to heal themselves, right? So go back to the invisible wounds, right? Those internal traumas. A lot of times people don't like to go through the complete healing process of anything.
Right.
We as humans always want a shortcut to something, right? So we don't want to, and I often tell people, man, in this healing process, there's going to be pain, right? Pain will always be a part of that process, and you need to complete that process. So don't try to shut it down when those painful moments arise. Deal.
Mm-hmm.
Face it head on and get it, right? And understand what's causing this pain, and let's get better from it. Stop trying to go around it. Stop trying to shut it down. Stop trying to think we're mentally strong enough to ignore it, because you're not. Because what's going to happen is, as soon as somebody says something or do something to trigger that thing again, it's going to snap right back. So my definition of self-love is, hey, like whatever pains, traumas, whatever you are going through as an individual, Black man, Black woman, white man, white woman, whoever you are, whatever pains you struggled with and you suffered through, allow yourself complete healing. If you allow yourself complete healing, you can do wonders for yourself. So that right there is important to me. No matter what I go through, or no matter what I've been through, I have to really dig in and make sure that I'm over that thing to the point where I can move on and not be mad at nobody else and carrying this over to somewhere else, because it's not the next individual's fault that you've been through that. So is it fair to them for you to throw that baggage onto them? It's not. And then if you don't take out time to learn yourself, you can't be truthful to nobody else. You lying to everybody else if you don't know you. So then how can you love me if you don't love you?
Right.
Right. So that's my thing in terms of self-love, man. We got to get it right. Like there's no way, there's no shortcut to self-love. There's no way around the pain. Let's hit it. Let them tears roll. That's therapeutic, if nothing else. Allowing them tears to roll. Sometimes, man, you can cry, and when you're done, you be like, man, I needed that. I really needed that. So yeah, that's so important. It's such an important key. And that thing, man, like about when you look at everything from a negative perspective, that's tough, man. You definitely reached an unacceptable level of hate because it's everything. Oh no, how? Go lock yourself in, get right.
When you look at everything from a negative perspective, it's like a virus. You know what I'm saying? It's like a bad stench. You know, people that's around, they don't want to feel that energy. You know, it's so like you can feel that negative energy from people that, you know, there's some people that you just don't want to talk to, because if you tell them the sky is blue, they're gonna find a cloudy. They're gonna find a dark cloud, no matter
somewhere.
What.
Yeah,
you want to hear that. It just really tears down other relationships too, you know, just around you when people have that negative perspective. It does a disservice to everybody. So,
and you got to protect your mental, right? You can't allow everything in. I'm a teacher. And when a kid raised their hand to come to me, and they come to me with their cheeks poked out, to me, and they come to me with their cheeks poked out because they don't understand something and dragging their feet, go back to your seat. Don't bring me that energy. I can't allow that in my space, right? Because it's just work. We'll figure it out. Go back to your seat, exhale a little bit, come back here with a more positive attitude. I got you. But with that, I can't allow that in my space. So you go sit down until you're ready to hang out with me.
Right. And that's how we need to approach everything and everybody.
100%.
Get right. Get your mind right. Get yourself right before you come in my space, because like that negative energy is so contagious and it weighs you down and nobody wants it. So last but not least, I wanted to talk too about, so you do have a podcast and you have these vibe sessions that take place on every Saturday night. So I wanted to hear about that too. You know, how do you unwind? How do you get that vibe going?
Well, we're actually on Sundays. Facebook Live at Vibe Sessions Official on Sundays. It's myself, my partner Nitty Green from the group Riff. He also sang with Men of Vision as well, 90s R&B groups. And his lady, Danielle Silver, she's the producer of the show. So that's a pretty cool concept. What happened with Vibe Sessions is Riff was supposed to take that slot when the pandemic happened, just to kind of keep themselves relevant to, you know, their fans. And I don't know, the guys just didn't want to do it. So Nitty one day asked me, because he didn't have a show lined up, and the book was actually getting ready to be released. So he was like, listen, can I interview you about the book? And we did. And the interview went really well. Then we did a part 2 to it. And then we just kind of like the vibe, the way the interview flowed. And so he was like, listen, why don't you just come on Vibe Sessions and be one and you know, so our Vibe Session, we discuss life, love, and music. So naturally, I'm the life and love guy. He's the artist, so he's the music piece. And we've had some phenomenal guests on the show as well, man. We've had Shanice, Men at Large. We've had Devontae from Jodeci. We've had H-Town. Lil Joe from Rude Boys. We had I can't remember everybody. We had we had a nice lineup of people. And it's fun. It's fun. So it's not, for me, I don't even really have to get mentally prepared to go into Vibe Sessions. Just knowing that the people are going to be there and you can kind of be yourself because it's your format is enough for me to just like say, hey, let's just go enjoy the moment. And we do. We just go in and we enjoy it. And I love it, man. And even when we don't have guests and we just have our normal topics and the people are talking back, it's just, you know, it's cool to know that you can touch people in so many different ways. Because when we went through the pandemic, what we didn't want to do was oversaturate people with COVID. Everything now was on the news with George Floyd and these things, right? Not to ignore them as if they would go away, but just to give people a break from, you know, all of the weight that we were kind of dealing with at that particular time. So we just wanted to come in, man, and talk about love, talk about loving one another. And we knew people being locked in the house, that would be a challenge. So we just wanted to challenge people, man, to understand that whatever commitments you made, you know what I mean, in the beginning of this relationship, listen, let's go back, right? And let's chop it up. Let's sit down. Like, yo, remember, you promised me that regardless of what happens, we're gonna roll. We're gonna figure it out and we're gonna roll. Don't shut down on me now. So I always challenge people to do that, right? Because let's face it, in any relationship, right? What was your biggest argument when you first got into this relationship and everybody is so in love with one another, right? The biggest argument you had with one another was, no, you hang up first. No, you hang up first. No, you hang up first. No, you hang, right? So listen, keep that. Keep that. Don't listen. You got it. Let me tell you something. Her feet would stink when you first started dating her and she threw them up on your lap for you to rub them. Don't try to act like they too stink now and rub them. Just take care of one another, man. At the end of the day, and we try to push that message on Vibe Sessions as well, to the point where we got a couple of the guys in the chat and they're inspired by that. So even as we're closing our show, they put a little love message in the chat for everybody that was a part of the show on that day. And I feel good because that's something that I always do. I always talk about love one another, love yourself. Let's take care of one another because it's tough out here, man. It's tough. So yeah, that's so important. That love thing, it's just so important to me. It is so important.
Yes, it's a definite necessity. So thank you so much. I've had an amazing conversation. But before we leave, tell everybody how they can find you, your website, how they can purchase this book, and how they can tune in to these Vibe Sessions on Sunday nights.
Vibe Sessions Official every Sunday night on Facebook Live at Vibe Sessions Official. So we air 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can find us on Vibe Sessions. Myself as well. I'm on Facebook at Little Pie McElveen. That's LittlePieMcElveen. So that's Little Pie McElveen on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Website is www.littlepiemcElveen.com. That's LittlePieMcElveen. So you can the book will be up there soon. Right now it is on Amazon, or you can go to my Facebook, Instagram, DM me, and I can get you the book. Which you probably want to do that. That's the way you'll get a signed copy. Amazon, you can't get a signed copy. And listen, man, it's definitely some good information in it. I even allowed my kids to write an open letter to tell how they felt, you know what I mean, about the divorce, just so that, man, because their voice is important in that process. So I just urge everybody, man, that's going through it, if you have to go through it, just make sure you don't divorce your kids. Make sure you handle it like responsible adults, and continue to love, man. Continue to love. And for those that has been through it, don't shut yourself down. Go through your healing process completely. And listen, you want to be loved, and go love somebody else. And let's just, let's just enjoy life, man. We only had that much time here. You know what I mean? Yeah. Let's enjoy this ride, peoples.
Yes. Thank you so much. I have really, really, really enjoyed this conversation. And thank you so much also for just pinpointing not only is it important for us to love ourselves, but also to love other people. So that was a great tie. So I hope everyone goes ahead and takes in these gems, like especially for anyone that's going through a divorce and maybe going through a divorce, just don't divorce your children. Just remember, if there's kids involved, it takes a lot of maturity to not make your children victims. Like I said, my was definitely not as positive, from this conversation, unfortunately. And it's a lot, dealing with the repercussions just when a relationship ends in general, when there's children involved, and also healing yourself, moving forward, realizing, hey, there's some parts of myself that I can fix, in order to move forward. Because a lot of times when we split from people, it's so easy to point to the other person and say, oh, well, they did blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, even if it may not be your fault, there's still always something that we can fix about ourselves,
100%.
Right. Even let's say we were hurt by that person, there's still something in us that welcome that, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So we all got to do that healing. So once again, just whatever you do, make sure you go love yourself, be safe, but also get that healing, whatever it takes to get that healing, self-reflection, therapy, reading more, just connecting with people, or even disconnecting sometimes, getting that solitude, whatever it takes to heal. Just know that you're worth it and you deserve that healing. So thank you guys. You can catch this episode and many more on www.theqchat.com. And you can also watch this episode on YouTube. That's Go Queen TV. So just make sure you stay connected, go love yourself, and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Della must have did this beat.